Hola a todos and welcome back to my channel. I'm elyce.behrsin and today I thought I would do another story time about how I ended up in Spain because it's kind of random. To give you the full story, I feel like I have to go all the way back to last time I was in Spain, which I did another story time on. If you want to see it, I'll link it somewhere. I met an Australian girl when I was in Basque Country and she had quit her corporate job and moved to Spain to start English teaching because she had fallen in love with a Spanish man. And I just remember thinking, that sounds really great. This was when I was still at university. I hadn't even had a corporate job before, but I had already decided at some point in my future, I would quit my corporate job and move to Spain. And that's not exactly what happened, but kind of. I graduated from my master's and then I moved to Brazil. After living and working in Brazil, working on a development project there, I traveled around a bit, I did some Spanish classes and just generally fell in love with Hispanic culture even more. Then I went back to Australia to pursue my career in corporate life so that I could eventually move to Spain. So I got a job in Sydney working for a not-for-profit in their communications team. I had a beautiful office in a beautiful location and hated working 9 to 5. I just think that there's something that my body is like physically opposed to about 9 to 5 life. So after 2 years, I decided that I was going to quit and I wasn't going to look for another job. I was going to go traveling. And that's more or less what I did. I quit my job, I spent a month on the beach in Sydney, then spent a month down in Melbourne with my family, and then went to Bali. So spent a month in Bali, just like doing yoga every day and chilling out and doing some freelance work for my old boss and a couple of other clients that I had acquired, and then traveled around Asia for a bit. When I was in Asia, I ended up somehow in Vietnam for a very extended period of time. It 100% wasn't intentional. I always intended on teaching English for a bit there part-time while I also freelanced, but it kind of just went on for longer than expected, partially probably because we semi-adopted a cat while we were there and we were looking for a new home for the cat. As you do, thing for adopting stray animals. So yeah, spent a bit of time there. Then eventually was just like, okay, it's time to go to Europe. I'm really lucky because I have dual citizenship. So I have an Australian passport and I also have an Estonian passport, which gives me the freedom to work pretty much wherever I want in Europe, at least within the European Union zone. So came to Europe, went to Sweden for a wedding that I missed because of like a million delays in transfers with the airline, which was just a nightmare. And I'm not even going to talk about that in this video. With the end goal of moving to Germany and just like spending like a year or 2 years in Germany freelancing or getting work there in comms after doing a course. So I actually had already studied German. So I spoke not really well, but I spoke quite a bit already. So when I landed, it wasn't that hard to kind of get myself on my feet. I enrolled in a couple-month German course because I just really wanted to get myself up to a better level so that I could be applying for more different types of jobs so that I wasn't like solely relying on freelance and so that maybe I could get some work locally. My course ended in October or November. And so I'd been there for about 6 months by this point. Berlin in summer is amazing. It's got to be one of the nicest places in the world when the sun is shining. When that sun goes away and it's dark at 3 p.m. in the afternoon, it is grim, especially for an Australian. Like, I'm kind of used to seeing the sun all year round, and this was like October or November where it was getting bleak. And it was so cold. I just remember going to the Christmas markets and being so cold. I've been to Northern Europe in winter before, I just forgotten. And it's different when you're on holidays, I think, because you're staying in hotels and you're always excited about the thing you're doing, whereas when you're living somewhere, yeah. My course ended, and obviously because my course ended, I was going to start job hunting. And come on, job hunting is bleak in the best of times. It is especially bleak when German winter is setting in. I was like sitting at my desk in my honestly so beautiful Berlin apartment. It was one of the nicest apartments I've ever lived in my life. But I would sit there and just look out the window and think, I just don't want to go outside for the next 3, 4, 5 months. I actually have some really, really good German friends. So at least I had people to socialize with. I always think if I didn't have them, I probably would have just never made any friends there because I never wanted to leave my apartment. German culture is very different to Australian culture and very different to Spanish culture. It's just one of those places when you're not used to strangers not smiling at you, it kind of gets to you after a while. Like I'd just be walking down the street and you'd expect smiles from people going past because in summer they kind of do. And then it just kind of would never happen. You go to the supermarket and no one would really talk to you. You just go through the checkout. And honestly, you go into a supermarket and it seems like something's happened every time because it's just like dead silence. And I just remember I would just feel like I couldn't even whisper because I would just be like interrupting this like weird social contract that everyone had to literally not make a noise. I don't know how people go about their lives so quietly. I applied for a couple of jobs and I actually got offered a couple of interviews. But anyway, I was kind of branching out a little bit. Nothing was really jumping out to me. There was a role with a UN body that I had been offered an interview with, but it was unpaid for like 6 months, and Berlin's cheap, but it's not that cheap. I kind of just had this crisis moment one day where I just thought, what am I doing with my life? I need to move to Spain. That's just the thing that I need to do. I don't know why, I don't know how it came about. I think I remembered the Australian girl and starting to learn some Spanish when I was in South America and just how friendly like Hispanic culture was and the idea of like blue skies. And so I essentially joined every expat group under the sun in Spain, particularly in Andalusia. I don't know why, considering my previous experience in Seville, I'm not sure why I decided that I wanted to move to Andalusia opposed to other parts of Spain. I just decided I did. So I joined like the TEFL teachers and the expat groups, and then I also joined the English teachers or TEFL teachers in Seville group. And I just scrolled through to see what was on there. It wasn't hiring season because hiring season is usually like summer and pre-September because that's when the school year starts. But you know, I thought, who knows? Anyway, there was one job posting and it was for an academy that was outside of Seville in a town. And I've kind of always liked the idea of living in a town because I think that when you live abroad and you live in a city, it can be quite hard to immerse yourself in the language because you tend to make friends with other expats and other foreigners, and just generally people seem to speak more English in the cities. So it kind of appealed to me on that basis, and also the fact that it was kind of close to Seville and I knew that it was a beautiful city. It was Andalusia, so it was going to be about as warm as you can get in Europe in winter, except for the Canary Islands, obviously. And yeah, so I sent through my resume, not expecting anyone to respond because every job I'd applied for in Germany had taken like a week or so for people to respond to me. Anyway, someone responded to me, I think like an hour or so later saying, hey, can you jump on a Skype interview later today or tomorrow? And I'm one of those people, I don't like to make like spur of the moment decisions. So it was all about tomorrow and not about that day. So I jumped on Skype and the person I was supposed to be Skyping wasn't there. And then I was just waiting 10, 15, 20, half an hour. So I thought, normally that would be enough to kind of annoy me about a job interview and probably turn me off the job. But I thought, you know what? I'll just send an email. I had worked in Brazil, so I was kind of used to time flexible cultures, as I've mentioned in another video. And he emailed back straight away saying, I'm really sorry I've been held up, but I will be on in like 10 or 15 minutes. Anyway, half an hour later, so it was about an hour late, he jumped on Skype and we had a Skype call. I don't remember what we talked about. It is all a blur. Eventually he was just like, okay, great, all sounds good. So I'd really like to know if you want to move. And I was like, huh, what? It's really not common in Australia to kind of ask someone if they want the job in the job interview. Although that weirdly happened in my interview in Sydney, it isn't normal. So I kind of just said, oh yeah, I'll have a quick think about it and get back to you. So I thought about it and did some research on the place and was like, oh yeah, it's like a 20-25 minute drive from Seville Centre. Why would I ever look up how far it is to drive when I didn't have a car? Who knows? But yeah, kind of worked out that there were bus routes that went between Seville and there, because that's all you need. Thought about it for a day or so, because I was in this like moment of existential panic. Like, do I stay in Berlin and just like see it through? Because I didn't want to be working freelance from home in winter, because I just thought, if I work from home in a winter like this, I am literally never going to leave my apartment, and that would just be sad. I needed to find a new apartment because it was a short-term lease, so it was only for 6 months, and then I had to find something else. Apartment hunting in Berlin sucks. It is got to be one of the worst cities in the world for apartment hunting, partially because of the bureaucracy in Germany, and partially just because it's become a really popular spot for foreigners to move, yada, yada, yada. Had started doing that kind of unsuccessfully, and then really just was getting down to like, do I want to stay here and suffer through, or do I want to just like run away to southern Spain? Doesn't that just seem like the dream, like to run away from winter and run to southern Spain? Even now, I still think of it as a romantic notion. Anyway, like 2 days later, I emailed him back saying, yes, I definitely want to come. I still ummed and ahed about it privately after saying yes, but eventually booked my flight to Seville from Berlin, which was like a surprisingly really cheap flight. So that was also something that kind of made the decision really easy. I was in my head thinking, oh my God, what happens if I get to Seville and this job doesn't actually exist? I mean, I don't really know anything about this place. I don't know anything about the boss. I haven't signed a contract or anything like that. It was super informal. It was just like, yeah, come and I'll pick you up from the airport. Let me know when you arrive. I'd love you to get here before this date so you can come to the Christmas party. But that was kind of all that really went on. And I'm used to like really like formal situations where you like at least get the contract to look at so that you knew there was something happening. But that's not the Spanish way, especially not for academy jobs. So I've learned that since. So anyway, got on the flight. It was a super early, freezing cold morning. Flew in and arrived in Seville. And oh my God, I just felt elated. The sky was so blue. That word, like that color, sky blue, is Seville sky. It's just got to be one of the most magnificent skies in the whole world. That color blue is just exceptional. I still to this day think it's one of the most beautiful places for blue skies. Anyway, was still a little bit worried that this guy wasn't going to pick me up from the airport and I was just going to be stranded. But I did at that point think, well, if I'm stranded, I'll just go stay in a hotel and figure it out. There's got to be other jobs here. Like this job was way too easy to get for there not to be others. So the boss did turn up, picked us up from the airport, and then took us to the town. So the town is actually called Los Palacios y Vilafranca. And it is probably about 20-25 minutes from Seville City, but it's along quite an ugly stretch. So you leave Seville, which is obviously beautiful, one of the most beautiful cities in Europe, and then you drive through like factory areas and past some really quite ugly towns, to be frank. And I was like in the car thinking, the sky is still blue, so it doesn't matter. But also, oh God, what have I done? I've never lived in a town before. It was like the first moment that I'd realized, hey, you don't know anything about town living. Like, what are you gonna do not being in a city? problem for later, Elyce. Anyway, my boss had also organized an apartment for me. I'd only seen it through like videos on WhatsApp, but you know, at this stage, I wasn't that fussy. I just wanted to get to southern Spain to get away from northern European winter. So I was kind of just happy with whatever came up. It was 3 bedrooms, although I'd say one of the bedrooms was pretty much unusable because it didn't have a window, so it was like just a dungeon box room. So yeah, the apartment wasn't like anything special, but it was an apartment. It was a place to live. It did have its downsides, like a tiny ass water heater, and it was electric and no central heating, which weirdly in Andalusia, you don't think you're gonna need, but it's still cold enough that you need some heating, and double glazing wouldn't go astray. That's all I'm gonna say on the matter, because the apartments tend to be quite dark for summer, which makes them super cold in winter. And while the winter is short, it still happens. And even though I was when we first arrived, a bit like, oh God, this is really not a beautiful town. The town I live in now is definitely a lot more beautiful, but it had such a good atmosphere. An hour after arriving, we were sitting under some orange trees that had full oranges all over them, in the sunshine with a bright blue sky, eating rabas and having a beer, and life felt pretty great, I have got to say. That afternoon, we went to another bar, and the bars in that town are so cute and nice, and just the general atmosphere is just so great down there. And we met some other English speakers who came up and started talking to us, and then like tried to speak a bit of Spanish because obviously we'd had a couple of beers. And it was just like, it was such a nice feeling getting there. And just the smell of the orange trees and the fresh, dry air, it was really wonderful. It was also super nice because as much as I love Germany and Germans, and I think they make some of the best friends you could ever have in your life, German strangers can be quite hard to deal with if you're Australian, because we tend to smile a lot and greet people and talk to strangers, and Germans don't in winter. And I really had felt like even when I went to the supermarkets and no one spoke to me and it was just dead silent and my neighbors didn't greet me, I really felt it. And then when I got to Andalusia and we were just sitting at a bar and people were coming past and saying hello to my boss, and just strangers were greeting and people were smiling, it was a really, really good feeling. I just thought I would share that random story because I do get asked a lot. When I was living in Andalusia, when I was living in Los Palacios, and now when I'm living in Cantabria, people always say to me, but how did an Australian end up here? And it is kind of random. And the most random part about it is that I'd actually only intended on staying until the following summer. And then in my head, I still had planned on moving back to Germany for summer and to look for a job over summer rather than over winter. But I just have loved it so much, and I have just felt so at home and so relaxed and just so happy in Spain. And that's kind of why I'm still here. Maybe in the north and not in the south anymore, but just in general, I've really, really loved my time in Spain, and I don't want to leave at the moment. I am going home briefly over Christmas, but with full intentions of coming back and finishing off this school year. And then next school year, who knows where I'll end up, but I can imagine that it will still be in Spain. Anyway, I just thought I would share that story with you today. So if you have asked me in the past and I haven't got back to you, sorry. Or if you've ever wondered, like, why is this random Aussie girl in some random town in Cantabria, and how did she end up in Spain in the first place? Now you know. Anyway, if you did enjoy this video, please let me know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and give me a like, and I will see you all very soon. Hasta luego.